Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Reign of Troy Radio, episode 449, coming to you on Wednesday, September 28th, 2022. We're going to look ahead to Saturday night's USC Arizona State battle at the Coliseum, take your questions, and so much more. As always, feel free to follow us on social media. We're at Reign of Troy on Twitter and Facebook. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, and our email address is reignoftroy@fansided.com. I'm your host, Michael Castillo, and you can follow me on Twitter at MichaelCastFS, and I'm joined along with my wonderful co-host, Penguin of Troy on Twitter. You know her, Alicia Deratola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. That intro is still a little clunky.
No, I think it works. I think it flows.
Still working it a little bit. I think so.
I think you're getting into the flow of it. You're sort of figuring it out.
It's, one of the things that I've talked about before. I put this on Twitter a few days ago that I'm sad that the rant line is currently in hiatus because we can't do the intro. But B, I miss all of you guys, all of you Rotbots, calling into the rant line or the rave line. It would have been a rave line on Saturday night after the Oregon State game. I miss hearing you guys. And, it definitely comes up when it's not in the intro anymore.
Yeah. It's a bummer. I don't know what at this point. I just don't know what to do about it, and that makes me sad.
Yeah. Oh well. We'll make the most of it here, as we say, with us being live on the YouTubes. Thanks for joining us if you're joining us here on YouTube. As always, be sure to like this stream and subscribe. Subscribe. Helps grow the channel, helps us get to more other USC fans and convert them into being Rotbots.
Yeah, I mean, subscribing is the number one thing you can do for the show right now. It would mean a lot to us. The building the community that we have over on YouTube is our main priority at the moment, and it has been growing so fast, and we are so thankful to everyone who is already subscribed. But for those stragglers who haven't quite jumped on the train yet, even if you're a podcast listener, just jump over to YouTube real quick, hit the subscribe button, and you will be doing us a huge, huge favor, and we will love you forever.
Yeah, absolutely. We did get a new review over on Apple Podcasts, a 4-star review, which comes from Mr. Interval. Great, but the overuse of the word like. Great, but please, ... Stop saying the word like, or it's like constantly. It's unprofessional and annoying. Alicia, could you stop doing that, please?
I mean, I think that's a lot my fault. Thanks for the...
I mean, I'm guilty too.
Yeah, we're both guilty. I am a Valley girl, so maybe that's my excuse. Thank you for the review, Mr. Interval. I will say that we both have self-scouted ourselves on many occasions and have done a lot of work to try and limit the amount of likes and and just the pauses and filler words that we do to try and sound more professional. At the same time, part of me wants this podcast to feel like an actual conversation between Michael and I. And sometimes that'll mean that instead of just, talking slower, like you might hear from a talking head on NFL Sunday Countdown, sometimes I'm just going to let it rip. And if that's not your cup of tea, then I get it. But that's also going to be part and parcel of the way that we talk sometimes. And like I said, we are conscious and we do try to not fall back on those kinds of things, but they're going to happen. And that's my take on it. Not trying to say take the advice and throw it out or whatever. We are conscious of that. There's just something about the way that we speak that is maybe always going to include that kind of thing. And
I disagree with the unprofessional in a part. Annoying, maybe, certainly. I hear you. We're all annoyed by different things. I will say there's no bigger critics to either one of us than ourselves.
Yeah.
Every time I listen to the pod, or even just in the middle of a pod, and I say things like 100% or 1,000% or whatever it is, like I hate that I use the same words over and over again. But when you're doing something, especially live, we're doing this live for the first time this year, it's incredibly difficult. Like in a car cast, when we're doing when there's like, hundreds of people on it at the same time, and
we're digesting new information,
and you're reading the chat, and you're conversating, and you have to have something interesting, and you have to be on it every second. Yeah, it's going to be difficult, and sometimes you're going to have to use the 4-letter L word every now and then. But I will not, feel guilty for saying that. Be sure to like the video. There you go. Yeah.
The
Touchdown
more likes,
USC says happy to give you guys a like.
Yeah, the more likes we can get, the better. So every time you hear us say like on the show, then that's your reminder that you're supposed to go like the video on YouTube.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
That is a game and not an annoyance.
we need a ticker. We need a ticker.
We need a like ticker.
of all the stuff. But
yeah,
thanks for the review as always. And if you're listening to us and you'd like to leave a review, go over and head to Apple Podcasts and you can leave a review there as well. Alicia, let's get to the news. There is a little bit of it, and then we'll get into talking about USC and ASU, who are locking horns Saturday night at the Coliseum. We got to start with Lincoln Riley, who has some comments after the Oregon State win on a couple of different things. He talked about Caleb Williams and his performance against Oregon State. Quote, he had one of those nights where he wasn't at his best throwing-wise. It's going to happen. Even to the best of throwers, that last throw, there ain't 5 dudes in the country that make that throw, especially in that moment. He'll be fine.
Yeah, I liked that Riley said this. This was on Tuesday, so this was after our Fallout show. And it sort of encapsulates exactly what I was approaching this game with. He had an off night. I think that you start to push the panic button on Caleb Williams when he has 2 or 3 off nights in a row. And then you're like, well, this might actually impact the wins and losses of the season. But for now, you have to approach it from, it was an off night. He gets a really good opportunity here against ASU to settle himself down. And I hope that he takes it.
Yeah, he wasn't great on Saturday. 16 of 36, 44.4% of his passes were completed, but he made the big pass when he had to. And like we talked about, he was instrumental on the ground with his legs, not only just picking up yards when he needed to on that 4th down run. He wasn't going to pick up all of them himself. He needed that knee-on nudge. But how many times did he avoid sacks and do all the little things there?
Yeah.
And he didn't turn the ball over. And usually when you're talking about a bad quarterback performance, you're talking about turnovers. You're talking about fumbles, interceptions, all those things that ruin your chances of winning a football game. Caleb Williams, even on a bad night, did not do those things. And I think that goes a long way in telling you that even when he might be off, he's not going to completely take SC out of a game that way. And SC ultimately wins the game because they hang around enough. They get help from the defense, and they're able to win. The key is how can he bounce back, after those setbacks. He had those setbacks last year. Year as a freshman, we talked about that before. 9 of 18 against Baylor, 8 of 18 against Iowa State, and he bounced back with a 3-touchdown performance in Bedlam. Nearly won the game, which would have been super awkward because I don't know if Lincoln Riley comes to SC if he wins at Bedlam.
Yeah, there's an alternate universe that I'd be curious to get I would not love to see that alternate universe because I would be a little bit more worried about where USC stands, but fascinating to see an alternate universe.
You hating on the Jack Del Rio Trojans right now? What are they, like 2-2?
Yeah, yep, pretty much.
All right. Lincoln Riley also talked about the knee-on nudge, saying it was awesome. One of my favorite plays I've ever had anywhere. That right there is everything that we've been preaching. That gives you a chance even when you're not at your best offensively.
Yeah, and I think he's spot on here as well. That is a highlight reel play that you show to your entire team to say that effort will be rewarded. Playing to the whistle will be rewarded. putting yourself in the right position and following your training to put yourself in the right position, and you will be rewarded, because Brett Nealon could have just taken the rest of that play off and ball watched essentially, and he didn't. He got into it, he got there, and he made the difference. I feel kind of bad that we are not. I love the Nealon nudge thing, but at the same time, like there was another offensive lineman involved in that push. Like, so but I couldn't identify who it was. So like, I feel like we're giving all the credit to Brett, and he deserves all the credit. But there were, I think USC's offense in general as a team was on point on that play to make that happen. So kudos to everybody.
Yeah, it got the huge first down. SC's able to stay alive and pull out the win. And it's remarkable how things completely change. It literally is a game of inches. You get that first down, you stay in, you get the win, and people talk about the game in a completely different manner, right? That close to being a loss for USC, and it's not. Let's go and talk about injury update. This happened, I want to say it was last week after the preview of the Oregon State game. We just didn't get to talk about it because it was late in the week. But Romello Height is going to be out for the season. He had season-ending, is it shoulder surgery?
Yeah, so he suffered that injury early, and it didn't sound like it was season-ending initially, but obviously they went through the process and figured out that he would be best off getting the surgery. So that's a bummer. It would have been nice to see what he could accomplish as the season continued to go on. That's one less pass rusher that USC has. That's depth that I think could certainly become concerning later on in the season. On the plus side, Solomon Byrd has been really outstanding in that position for USC, stepping in. We still haven't seen Corey Foreman. If I remember correctly, he did not play against Oregon State. So there's still big question marks around him, but he's hopefully lurking as an impact player potentially there. But it's a bummer. It's just disappointing.
He's someone that you would have had, high hopes for, Mr. Height, coming into the season from Auburn.
Touchdown USC in the chat says that Monheim was the other nudge player. So credit to Monheim as well. Don't want to leave him out of there. I'm sure the coaches have given him praise in the video sessions as well.
If you go back and watch the nudge play, like everybody was.
Everybody's there. Nealon is the one that starts it, but there are a bunch of guys. Nealon alone might not have gotten Caleb across that line. The pile moved, and that was really big. Yeah, for sure. And going back to Height, it's just a matter of next man up. How do you keep going forward? And the good thing for SC is this more of an opportunity for Solomon Byrd? Solomon Byrd, we saw have a big game against Fresno State. We saw him against Stanford and Oregon State have impacts as well. Can he continue? He's not exactly playing the same position as Romello Height, but he can at least provide production from the defensive end spot. Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, Byrd created an interception in that game. Or at least a third down miss or whatever. I did just know that there was one play that was seared in my mind where he just got in Chance Nolan's face, and the pass was bad, and I'm pretty sure it got intercepted. So yeah, good for Byrd, and that isn't Byrd a really good example of next man up? He was a guy who wasn't involved early in the season. He wasn't a guy who was getting the snaps, and he got them later on, and he's killing it.
Yeah. Noah G in the chat says the coaching staff sending an important message to the team by not playing Corey and being down Romello Height. I don't think so. I don't think it's that deep. I don't think that you sacrifice playing one of your players on the road at Oregon State in a key early season game just to make a statement. And if you're doing that, I think it's a bad coaching move if you are.
Here's what I'll say. We're not gonna get Tim Prangley is confirming that the right interception was the Byrd hurry. But thank you guys for filling in the gaps from the game here from us. But Corey dealt with injuries throughout the offseason. We're not obviously going to get any injury updates that they're not going to willingly give. And so I don't want to speculate too much that like this is definitely the thing, but I would also wonder if maybe there's a health thing going on that's why he couldn't play. It would make more sense to me that it's a health thing than they're like benching him for some reason because he can't play or sending a message or anything like that. The message that's sent, I think, is if you make plays, then you will play. And I think Solomon Byrd is making the plays, so he's warranting those snaps. And we will, like I said, we'll monitor what Corey's status is for the rest of the season. But for now, USC is having to rely on Byrd and some other guys, and they are getting the job done.
Yeah. Dare I say Byrd is the word?
Byrd is the word.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about USC and Arizona State. Locking horns at the Coliseum, 7:30 p.m. on ESPN. It's going to be Rod Gilmore and the other guy who just completely escapes my mind for a second.
I don't know. You remember broadcasters in a way that I just don't.
Well, like, Gilmore.
Rod Gilmore is easy to remember.
He's easy to remember. Yeah. But I had this thought when I was making the graphic here on for YouTube. We have a little lower third that's the logos, and it's a little scoreboard that doesn't have the score in it because the game hasn't happened. But it has the date, October 1st. Alicia, you know what happened October 1st when these teams met before?
On October 1st, not last year, but in a past game?
Yes.
The ASU games that I distinctly remember in my life are the Lane Kiffin Tarmac game, which was earlier in the season, I think. And the Thanksgiving game, which obviously was not October 1st.
Yeah. So the reason I bring this up is because I go back to 2005. USC
was that in October?
It was October 1st that SC went to Tempe, and
I can tell you where I was for that game. I was in Sacramento watching in a back room because I was the only one who wanted to watch the game.
So how did you feel when SC dropped down to a 21-3 deficit?
I was losing my stuff.
Yeah, that was. I remember this because just last week I was putting together a Spotify playlist of the Eagles, and I remember that I saw the first time I saw the Eagles in concert, September 24th, 2005. My parents and I went down and watched the Oregon game downtown because it was like a 4 p.m. kickoff or something in Eugene. And then we walked to Staples Center for the concert afterwards. And I remember walking to the concert, just telling my dad, like, it was the greatest Pete Carroll coaching job I've ever seen, because SC was down 13-3 in that game and ultimately blew them away, winning 45-13, I think. 42 unanswered points, I believe, against Oregon. Here we are. And we've talked about how USC's offense, all these different things compare back to 2005. This is USC is running at the highest yards per carry clip since 2005. All these things and these stats go back to 2005, and yet here we are, and USC is once again playing Arizona State on October 1st, just like they did in 2005. That game, of course, a classic. If you are a new USC fan, if you have not watched the 2005 SC ASU game, go back and watch it.
When you talk about if you talk to a USC fan about the Pete Carroll era, and you ask what the classic USC performance is, and when USC fans talk about like second half adjustments in the Pete Carroll era, watch this game and you will see exactly what that means. Because wow, that was a game in the second half.
It was incredible. Game day game there in Tempe. Josh Geyer says, throwback to Dirk Cutter. Yeah, Dirk Cutter, by the way, he's back at Boise State as an assistant, even though he was fired at Boise State almost 2 decades ago. Or did he leave there to go to ASU?
I have no idea.
Either way, 2005, hell of a game. SC wins 38-28 in a second half in which they ran the ball literally on every play, it felt like. And Lendale and Reggie just ate after being down 21-3. So,
which is one of my favorite things, because like if you think about it, like you're down 21-3, what is your instinct? What do you do? And most teams philosophically would just say, well, we're just going to pass.
Right.
But that
especially
USC
when you have the
team,
Heisman winner.
Yes. But that USC team was like, no, we're going to run it down your throat and you're not going to be able to stop us. And that was just chef's kiss. And then the defense really just turned things on and had that swagger back.
The fourth down stop, Oscar Lua.
Oh, yes. Good old Oscar.
We should make this pod just like a nostalgia pod.
I mean,
it's just like, remember that time?
I have things to say about ASU, but none of them are particularly like, I don't want to get ahead of myself here, but this matchup is not necessarily a one that should go down in the record books as a danger team.
All right, let's just get into it. ASU coming into the Coliseum with no more Herm Edwards.
Yeah, on our rundown, we have our overview for the team. So we have like record and last year's record and head coach. And I've literally written there, not Herm Edwards.
Yeah, the head coach is not Herm Edwards, who was fired in his fifth year. They started 1-2 on the season, including a loss to Eastern Michigan. Eastern Michigan, for the longest time, like the worst team in FBS. And, of course, they beat ASU a couple of weeks ago. That was it for old Herm. He's been replaced by Sean Aguano, who's been the ASU running backs coach since 2019. Formerly the coach of Chandler High School for 8 seasons. Won 4 state championships there in the Grand Canyon State. A local legend, but coaching ASU, especially in this year of the dumpster fire, maybe not his best setup to get W's. They are 65th in SP Plus, 69th. Nice by Jeff Sagarin, but even that seems a little bit high. For the Sun Devils, they are led by Emory Jones at quarterback. This is a team that is 106th in scoring offense, 101st in total offense, 101st in passing offense, 123rd in third down conversion rates at 28.3%. Alicia, this team is bad. This is the worst team USC has faced since Rice. And I guess you can make the argument that Rice might be at ASU if they played today.
The thing I'll say about Rice versus this ASU team is I think that Rice offense at least has an identity of what they want to do and what they want to be.
Yeah.
And what I've always said is that when a team knows what they want to do and what they want to be, they can be dangerous even if they're not very good. And I think we saw that from Rice, where Rice was able to move the ball in certain ways because they sort of had a plan. I don't know what this ASU offense wants to be. I know what they should want to be, but I don't think they're capable of being it.
Yeah.
This is a mess. Emory Jones. So I watched the extended highlights of the Utah game, which maybe isn't fair because Utah is so much better than this ASU team.
Yeah.
And playing that Utah defense, it would be tough for even this USC offense, I think. So not really fair. But what I can tell you my takeaway from that is they were put in a lot of third and forever situations. They were not having success on first or second down. That third down conversion percentage is very much, at least reflected from the Utah game, that they're in like 3rd and 12, 3rd and 15. They're not a very disciplined team, so they get a lot of penalties, which pushes them back into third and forever situations. Emory Jones, the quarterback, looks like he can make a throw. Like he has a pretty decent arm when he's able to get a throw off. But they're 81st in sacks allowed this season. They're giving up 2.25 sacks per game. And they are bad sacks, like the kind where the quarterback has no chance to get a pass off. And that's just that's where they're at. Like, I think their offensive line isn't very good. The quarterback can't make up for it. I think the rushing offense is if I were them, is what I would sort of focus in on. Xavier Valade looks like he has some burst.
Amazing name, by the way.
Amazing name. all name team. I'm like, I wish that I had been able to suggest him for our fansided.com all name team this season, because that's just outstanding. Xavier Valade, just A plus name, and a good rusher. He's averaging 6.52 yards per carry, but a lot of those are coming in chunks. And so it's very feast or famine. And that's sort of why they can't, again, they can't get sustained drives, because they're getting 0 yards or 10 yards. Like, it's just, they're in a bad situation on offense. And I think this is actually the perfect offense for USC's defense to be facing right now, as like a little test, because we saw that they were vulnerable to Rice. We saw that they were a little less vulnerable to Fresno State, but still a little bit vulnerable. We saw that they were really able to shut down Oregon State when it mattered, not just from the turnovers, but the turnovers were obviously a big thing, but they definitely took care of that business. This offense is going to be one that I'm going to be especially curious about how they fare against them, because if ever there was a team that USC could stop in their tracks, it feels like this one. So if this ASU team is able to march down the field against this defense, then I think we can have another conversation about the vulnerabilities of this defense looking ahead to the rest of the season. But they shouldn't be able to. And so I really want to see USC's defense respond, build off of last week's performance, and ideally, I would love to see them shut down this offense without needing a turnover. Without, I want to see them force some punts. Let's see some punts. ASU has a good punter, Eddie Zaplicki. Am I saying that right?
Zaplicki looks right.
Zaplicki is seventh
Another
nationally.
Cool name.
Yeah, he's seventh nationally in punting. He's had to do a lot of it, but he's averaging 46 yards per punt. So, like, let's see a lot of Zaplicki, and let's see how we can learn his name, because I think this is going to be a show me game for this defense for me.
What is it with ASU always having good kickers and punters?
They're like the kicker. They're the punter specialist sort of team.
Yeah, they always really have a good kicker and punter for sure. Yeah, I like what you said there about, like, this is a I wouldn't say that a challenge for USC's defense. More so, like, this is your opportunity to go out there and prove that you can make stops beyond just being able to force a bunch of turnovers. Just make stops. And if you can't make stops against this team, then maybe they are the bend don't break team that we said that they could be, or were facing that label, right? And this is the team that you want to avoid that against. Emory Jones, someone who comes to ASU from Florida, he replaces Jaden Daniels, who's now at LSU. Jaden Daniels, I always felt like he underperformed at ASU. Like, he never reached the level that they wanted to get him to. And I look at so far Emory Jones and kind of just doing the same thing. You look at what he did last year at Florida, started 10 games for the Gators. He was good. Good, not great.
He's a capable quarterback.
Yeah. But I don't know that the system is there to allow the quarterbacks to succeed at the optimum level. Defensively, ASU still has Merlin Robertson in the middle of that defense. He's the heart and soul of that defense. He has been since he got there as a true freshman. Leads the team, tied for the lead in sacks, 33 tackles, a sack, a PBU, a forced fumble, all those things. He's someone to watch for on defense. But I guess the question is, what USC offense are we going to see? Are we going to see the offense that we saw the first 3 weeks of the season? Maybe the first 2 weeks of the season that were super explosive? The methodical offense that we saw in week 3? Or are we going to see the sputtery offense that we saw last week against Oregon State that pulled it out at the end, but certainly didn't make things easy for themselves?
I would tend to think that this will be an easier time for USC, just in the sense of, I don't know that this ASU team has the havoc makers to do to USC what Oregon State managed to do to USC. Now, I didn't necessarily think that Oregon State was going to have as much success as they did. So take that for what it's worth. Sometimes, teams can come out of nowhere with guys who step up. But this team can't get pressure on the quarterback. They are 128th in sacks. They're averaging 0.5 per game, half a sack per game. That's just not good enough. Their tackle for loss numbers aren't great. They're not creating havoc, and that is that's a problem. And the interesting thing is that their pass defense is okay. They rank 30th in pass defense. They give up 194.5 yards per game. Defensive passer rating is 49th in the country, 122.56 for the passer rating, which is a pretty good, for a passing defense when you're not getting very much pressure on the quarterback. The problem is they're missing a starting corner in Ro Torrance has been out for 2 games with an ankle injury. Not necessarily going to play this game. Unknown, though it's a question. But now they've had the Markham twins, Kejuan and Keon, step away from the team for personal reasons. Keon was starting in place of Ro Torrance. So if he's not there, they're scraping down for their corners. Kejuan, it was the starting safety for the first 2 games, but he was now a backup at safety, another depth piece that's going to be missing for them. So their secondary is sort of bleeding a little bit. If they're not able to get pressure on Caleb Williams, he won't have the issues that he had against Oregon State.
Yeah.
And the big thing that I'm circling for this game is hello, Travis Dye, because they are 109th in rushing defense. They are 93rd in rushing yards per play. You can eat on the ground against this team. And that is what I kind of want USC to come out and make a statement, almost like we talked about with that USC win in 2005. Except don't wait for the second half. Just come out and say, you know what? We're going to run until you stop us. And then on third down, you are the 97th defense in third down conversion defense, giving up 41.7%. Caleb, only throw on third down if you need to. Like, that's the way I would go. I would just run. If you haven't gotten the first down yet, okay, let Caleb do his thing. Run. If you haven't gotten the first down yet, let Caleb do his thing. I think you can have a lot of success against this defense. And in a lot of ways, this is also set up to be a good situation for USC's offense coming in, regain some confidence, and put up some points.
Did I mention the other day, I think I did, that one of my favorite SC games of the past is the 2004 ASU game? The week after the Cal game, the epic Cal
the triple overtime?
No, not the triple.
2004.
Yeah, 2004, which was the win and the goal line stand and all that. The game that SC, kind of steals it against Cal, and they go into the ASU game the next week and just murder them. And that was a good ASU team in 2004 with Andrew Walter quarterback. Really good ASU team. But they just took the momentum from that Cal game and just ran with it the next week. I'm kind of expecting that out of this game where, yes, SC struggled, especially offensively. We saw that with Caleb Williams, did not have a good game at all against Oregon State. But I'm sort of expecting this game to just be where the dam breaks in terms of momentum, especially in the ground when you look at how ASU has been susceptible to the run. Ride the run, take all the momentum in the world, and take out all the frustration on last week being close by just taking it to ASU. I think that sort of is my sort of blueprint for what this game could end up being. SC clearly a sizable favorite, 25.5 over with Vegas.
Roger Dodger in the chat says USC has to run until they stop dropping 8 into coverage. USC has to have a plan for max pass coverage.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're at ASU and you've seen the tape on this offense, you have to come into this game thinking we're going to drop 8. And so I just kind of want USC to say, you do that. Mm-hmm. And like with this ASU team, with a team with an interim coach, I think it's especially important at the Coliseum to sort of wear down their will early. And you do that by just running down their throat. And I think that watching, again, just an extended highlight package from the Utah game, I think that this ASU team can be gotten down sort of in terms of body language. And that's what, if I was USC, I would come in thinking like, by the end of the first quarter, we want them to feel like they are done.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always thought that going to the interim, you can get some juice. We've seen SC do that before, right? With Ed Ogeron in 2013. They got some new juice, just a different voice, a different sounding voice. And obviously the voice of Coach O, I'm not going to do that, was decidedly different than Lane Kiffin's voice in 2013, right? And in 2015, when SC found a way to win the division in 2015. Last year, they got the big win at Washington State, but ultimately it wasn't a sign of anything to come beyond that, right? I don't expect ASU to get sort of any juice out of not having Herm there. We saw that they went down 17-0 really early on to the Utes last week, and Utah being very good, probably not indicative of being able to see that juice, but SC is very good too, so I don't think you'll necessarily see it as well. Before we get to over-under, I want to talk about Eric Gentry playing his old team. The sophomore linebacker from Philly went to ASU last year. He was a freshman All-American. Now he's a Trojan. What's going through your mind if you're Eric Gentry going into this game, do you think?
Excited to see old teammates, but also I would be looking forward to show them that, like, yeah, no, it was the right decision for me to come to USC and to play really well. This is a very interesting scenario, though, because when you're playing the former team, like, are you amped up and, like, ready to go, or are you too amped up and maybe trying too hard to prove yourself, and maybe it sort of gets in your head? So that's something that Eric Gentry is going to have to answer. But I would imagine that he's excited to be at the Coliseum and be on the right side for once.
Yeah, there's talk in the chat about the 55, and Luant says, should Eric Gentry get number 55 if he continues to be on the pace that he's at right now?
Let's not Ian Ateote this. I've learned my lesson.
Gentry was at least a freshman All-American. It wasn't just one amazing game against Colorado like EA had. I think Gentry has a little bit more than that, but I will side with what Malcolm has said in the chat, which is that the 55 tradition has passed. No one wants to admit it. I think that's the case. I think that, unfortunately, since Junior Seau left us way too early, I think it's made it very touchy for how that number gets distributed. And it's difficult to give that number to anybody. And I think that it's only going to go to someone who is ultimately an All-American or something like that beforehand, which I think takes away from the spirit of what that 55 was, because the whole thing, that 55 became valuable when Seau gave it to Willie McGinnis as a true freshman, right?
Yeah.
And then it was given to, and just handed down the whole list. Like, it was given to Rivers, and it was given to all those guys as freshmen, and they had to embody what that number became.
But now they're scared. Gone. Now they're scared of giving it away because of Lamar Dawson and because of the sort of disappointment of well, what if the next guy turns out to be a bust? Right. So they don't give it to anyone, and so the tradition dies. And that's what I like. We've talked about this before on this podcast. Just give it to somebody. I don't care who it is at this point. I don't care if you want to award it to a player who was good the previous year and has earned it now going into the next year. I don't care if you want to give it to a freshman coming in as a recruiting tool. Just give it to somebody so that it can restart, so that we can get back into somebody's going to be wearing the 55, or retire it. Do one or the other. Have it in circulation, pick a way that we're going to do it and just hand it, or retire it, because it's annoying to me that this jersey,
the middle ground sucks.
The middle ground sucks. It's not retired, but we're sort of holding it so that no one can ever have it. Like, no. If at the end of the season, Eric Gentry has earned it, I would be happy to see him get it. I would also be happy to see anyone get to wear it on the field. So we'll see what happens. But I think the biggest barrier right now is that, like, it's almost like what they need is somebody very obvious to give it to. And there hasn't necessarily been that guy that's like, yeah, he has to have it. And maybe there's a recruit that fits that mold that really wants it. But the further away we get, like, at this point, if we still see guys wearing number 5 because of Reggie Bush, but like the 55 is now so far removed that like what recruit is coming into USC saying like I want 55, give me 55.
To Malcolm's point in the chat, like, the 55 isn't one of those numbers. Unfortunately, as much as SC fans value it, your 18-year-olds are not, like, it's single digits that are the big deal, right? Getting to a single digit is the thing that you want to be if you are a player, right? Like that's the goal. And SC has been a big proponent of that. You see all the single digits on offense. Now, at the same time, I think that if you reinstilled the value of the 55 by bestowing it on someone every year and all that stuff, you would rebuild the history of it. Look over at Michigan with how they deal with like the 98, right?
Yeah.
Was it Gardner that wore the 98 at quarterback? Like, there's no kid that grew up wanting to wear 98 at quarterback. You know what I mean? But like when you provide history and a reason for people to buy in,
it's part of your lore.
Yeah.
Make it part of your lore and embrace it as part of your lore. And if you're not going to, then retire it. Like, yeah.
100%. See, there you go. Putting it 100% because I have nothing else to say in a live podcast. Yeah. Well, all right. Let's get to the over-under. Alicia, this is a big week because you and I are tied at 16-16. We need a week to decide who is going to take the lead. Am I going to get the lead after having a big comeback week last week when I went 5-2 and you went 1-6? Is this my week to take the lead, or are you going to, get it right back? We'll see. What's your first line and over under this week?
All right, you guys have to listen carefully because this is not a straightforward one.
Uh-oh. We're doing these.
You know how there's a turnover margin? I'm setting a sack margin for this game. Plus 1.5 for USC. So USC's defense has 1.5 more sacks than ASU's defense. Does that make sense? We good? Okay. USC and ASU are both averaging 2.25 sacks allowed per game. Not a good average. USC needs to tighten that up. But USC's defense is averaging 3.5 sacks per game. So per game, USC's defense is averaging 1.5 sacks more than ASU's offense is giving up. Is that convoluted enough for you?
I mean, I get it, but I hate it.
Okay.
I hate it.
So over under plus 1.5 sack margin for USC's defense.
Yeah.
Or for USC, because it's about how many sacks USC gives up, how many sacks ASU gives up, and then how many sacks USC has and produces.
Yeah. I will be bold and take the over here.
Okay.
But
you hate it.
Yeah, I hate it for sure.
I had to get creative. This matchup is so not interesting. I was like, how am I going to get creative on this?
All right. My next one, 99.5. Travis Dye rushing yards. He has 3 straight 100-yard games. ASU is 109th in rush defense, allowing 182.5 yards per game. And 93rd in the country at 4.42 yards per carry. Does Travis Dye make it 4 straight games of 100 yards?
I am so torn on this. My gut is telling me no, because just simply because Raleek Brown is getting more healthy week by week. Austin Jones is still very heavily involved in this lineup, and like part of me thinks like the sort of the stats probabilities say it's going to be no, but I'm almost like this is what goes on in my brain. Yes, he's going to do it, but also the probabilities say he won't. But also, if I say the under, then is it reverse psychology so that then they will do it and give and get Dye the carries that he would need to get to 99 to get to 100 yards. So then maybe I should take the under, even though I think it's going to be over, so that then when I lose that, it's for the better good, because then USC will have like heard the cosmic stuff to say like, no, run the ball. So that's a long way of saying I'm going over.
Okay. I'll be honest. I think you kind of sold me on your rationale for why it could be under.
Yeah.
Really, Brown is coming back. Also, I think that we've talked about. Spoiler alert: ASU is real bad, and I think that's going to allow for maybe more opportunities for Austin Jones to maybe make up for his performance last week at Oregon State, which was not up to snuff. And maybe you see, more opportunities for other guys down on the depth chart. So, yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think Dye, in theory, should absolutely get the over there. But I see the game plan for it being under. What's your next over under?
Staying on the rushing theme, I'm going with 1.5 all caps my guy Dye moments in this game. So a my guy Dye moment is going to be like
go with like the weird ones.
This matchup is not worth setting detailed lines based on stats. This is the statement that I am making. 1.5 my guy Dye moments. That's that you should know one when you see one. I am setting that line at 1.5.
Yeah. Okay. 1.5. We're talking like big runs.
Big runs or big play. Like just like I said, it's like a he makes me drool play for the tight end. Like it when you see it.
Yeah. Over.
Oh, I like it.
I'll be bold.
I like it.
I'll be bold. You're being bold. I feel like I gotta be bold.
We gotta be bold
it's
today.
It's gonna set me up to like lose all these things again. My next one is completion percentage for Caleb Williams over under 67.5. Of course, he was not great last week. 44.4% of his passes were completed against Oregon State. Before that, 86% against Rice, 74% against Stanford, 68% against Fresno State. So does he bounce back to that 68% level that he was at Fresno State? 67.5 over under completion percentage.
I have a sneaking suspicion that one of the things that we've been talking about for the past 2 weeks is something that USC wants to correct, and that is explosiveness for this offense in the passing game. I think they're going to try to go long, and I think that's going to bring down his completion percentage. So I'm going to go under, actually. And okay. and yeah, I not far under. Like I think he'll be closer to 60%.
Okay, I could see it go either way. I could see him to continue to have struggles. Last year when he had those 2 bad games, the next game he was still barely over 50%, and had to work it back up. So that could make sense. Or I could see him having a maturation thing where he just gets it back.
He could complete 95% of his passes in this. Like, it would not surprise me.
Yeah, I could see it either way. What's your last one?
All right, I'm going 1.5 plus 1.5 USC turnover margin. So it's been a big question this week. Is USC's turnover margin sustainable? They're at plus 14. They're averaging plus 3.5 per game. That's pretty insane. It's leading the nation by a whole lot. No one's even close.
Right.
And part of that is because they're not turning the ball over. They are, if I remember correctly, the only team in the nation that has yet to turn the ball over.
That's correct.
And they are producing a ridiculous number of turnovers.
Yeah.
So the question of, like, is it sustainable? Can they possibly keep not turning the ball over and keep getting multiple turnovers in each game? Be pretty difficult. But, ASU is a team that has produced turnovers. They have a turnover in each game so far. They've also lost a turnover in each game so far. They were -2 versus Utah, so definitely wasn't a good game for them. So will USC manage to have a +2 turnover margin in this game, or will the rate of growth for USC's turnover margin slow down?
I gotta take the law of averages and say under.
I think that's the right way to go, and I think there's a very good chance I could win this. Just because of pure ridiculousness.
Realistically, I mean, SC's probably going to turn the ball over in the game,
You
right?
you have to think, right?
It's been 4 games. Like, just there's going to be a weird fumble, a weird tip, something, right? Like they're just due.
Yeah.
They're due for some turnover.
USC has had 3 fumbles and recovered all 3 of them.
Yeah,
so like
that's fumble luck has been on their side.
To happen eventually.
Tip luck and all those things. Like, yes. So okay, so if they commit 1 turnover, then that means to get the over, they'd have to force 3. Are they going to force 3 plus again? I don't like. That's a lot to ask for. So that gives me the under. I still think they could be like +1 on the turnover margin.
Yeah,
but
that's why I said it at 1.5.
Yeah. Tim says in the chat, I said that last week, right? Yeah, I did say that last week. Yeah.
I mean, every week I keep saying like they're going to run more than the over-under is, and then USC's defense holds them under. So it's a crapshoot here.
All right. My last one, I said 19 over under 19.5 points of scoring offense for Arizona State. The Trojans have kept 3 of their 4 opponents under 20, which has been nice in the teens. Can they do it again? ASU is averaging just 22.8 points per game over under 19.5.
Yeah, as you were setting this line, you were like, man, I hate this line. Like, you're going to just take the under and I'm going to lose. And I'm like, well, my scoring prediction, my game prediction is.
You can't talk about production. You can't tell people that we set the line before we pod.
I know.
What are you doing?
It's not off the cuff. I am actually going over on this one. I think that again, it's the law of averages. The luck is going to run out at a certain point. I don't think that means that USC's defense is going to be in danger, but I do think it's a situation where Arizona State is going to be able to score a point or two, just a touchdown or two, just by the very nature of offenses occasionally do that. I think that Valladay could break a run and score that way. I think Emory Jones could hit a really sweet pass. Like, if you watch him, you see him hit a really sweet pass every once in a while, and maybe that's the thing that gets them to the end zone. I just think the likelihood of another opponent being held under 20 is lower than ASU scoring 21. So,
yeah, I'm torn. So do you see this as like garbage time scoring?
Potentially, yeah. I think it could be garbage time. It could be something similar to what ASU did with Utah, where Utah's up 17-0, and then Utah sort of is on cruise control, and ASU just starts chipping away a little bit, and they're never really in danger of actually turning around the game, but they build up some points here and there. They can kick field goals, so they get into field goal range. They're not going to miss those field goals as often as maybe Oregon State or Stanford did.
Yeah, I'm fine with being locked into the under. That's a little precursor to my preview. I mean my prediction. Which let's get into game predictions. Bill Connolly has SC winning on a 79% clip here, with the predicted score of 35-21. We talked about it before. Vegas has USC as 25.5 point favorites. Alicia, what is your prediction?
I have USC 40, ASU 21. I don't think that this game will be necessarily that close. I think it's more likely that USC doesn't cover that 25.5 point spread, because I think it's more likely that USC does follow the Utah blueprint here. Getting out to a nice sort of 3-score lead and then just cruising to the end. I think that we're going to have a situation where ASU does pick away and start to pick up points and gets up over the 20-point margin, and it's just sort of a routine kind of game.
Yeah, like for me, like this is like one of those issues where like I'm trying to see where USC can go in this game. 2 weeks ago or last week, I was like thinking like this could be one of the moments where SC could have a 70-7 type win. I've talked about it before. Like there's like 3 that I could like see on the schedule. The Colorado game, of course, no pulse. ASU, like seemingly like no pulse. But last week's USC's offensive performance made me think that maybe they're not ready to score 70 points, like just quite like
they're not ready to score 70.
So
I love it.
At that point, I think that SC gets like close, but like not quite. So 55 points for SC. They do hold ASU under the 20 points, 17. I'll say 17, 55-17.
I like that scoreline. I like your scoreline better than my scoreline. I'm rooting for your scoreline. That would be a lot of fun. I think my scoreline could also be a lot of fun, but that's you got to do what you got to do with these score predictions.
All right, we're going to hit into the mailbag. So if you got questions, you're watching us here on YouTube. First thing first, go over to the video and hit like. Just like the thing.
Like the video, please.
Yeah, like it, and that'd be great.
Also, subscribe.
Yes. And throw your predictions in the chat, too. Remember, Murray says 48-10. The Lizard King, 55-3.
Lizard Kings, 55-3 just hit me somewhere. Hit me in a place somewhere that was like, that's the one. 55-0 would be even sweeter, but 55-3, that's the one.
It's a big margin, for sure. All right, mailbag. Let's get to these. Start answering questions here. Remember, Murray says that the game turns to a blowout by halftime. Can the CarCast episode start early instead of waiting until after the game is over? We can talk about the game while it's still going on.
We did that at one point last year. We obviously weren't doing live
There
podcasts.
were multiple games where we started the CarCast before the game
in the fourth quarter. Yeah, and not because it was a good game for USC, but because it was. You want to just get started on the CarCast? Like this is so dumb. So I don't know. It would have to be under special circumstances, I think.
I think this could, if the game is going long, I think that we could potentially do that. I think it's difficult when we have been saying that it's when the game is over, and so
because we don't want to start it without people knowing that that's where we're sort of going with it.
Yeah.
So also one of the things that I quite enjoyed was feedback from others where they said that they were listening in the car as they were leaving the game.
Yeah, which is awesome.
So
that's what the point of the CarCast.
That's probably the argument for waiting until the final whistle to go ahead and start. So
we've gotten feedback lately on YouTube about why we are naming things the way that we name them. Like why are the game recap episodes, the Monday night shows, why are they called Fallout episodes? Well, one of that is because that goes back to an old fan-sided strategy where you're talking about the Fallout in terms of what we would do for coverage would be at the beginning of the week is the Fallout from the game. And so like I liked that concept, and so that's why we use the name Fallout. But CarCast, the etymology of CarCast is twofold. One, we were recording those post-game episodes in cars for years and years. So many of them were recorded in the McDonald's parking lot on Figueroa, between Figueroa and Flower. After games, we'd be in the Jack in the Box parking lot, or we'd be
Munchie Meals. Post-game Munchie Meals were a favorite of mine. Yeah,
that Colorado game in 2019 when we were in a Wendy's parking lot in the middle of nowhere, Colorado.
Yep.
Yeah, that was fun.
Whataburger parking lots in Dallas.
Yes. But so those were truly in a car, but the whole idea of the CarCast goes back to I'm a big fan of the All the King's Men podcast. And back in 2014, they were doing when the Kings run to the Cup, they were doing episodes where they would be outside the arena, outside of wherever they were, whether they were at the pond or for road games or Staples, whatever, and they'd stand around a car and have a conversation. And so for me, the CarCast is like the idea is those are the conversations you have with the people who you went to the game with, either in the car driving home, or it's the conversation that you have on the way to the car. Either way, the car is involved, right? Yeah. And so to know that some people are listening to the CarCast as they drive home from the game warms me up inside.
Yeah.
Like that's what it's supposed to be about. And now we're recording them this is like 3 straight years where we've not been in a car doing it. And that's a bummer from a logistical standpoint because it kind of misses the vibe of what the CarCasts were. But at the same time, it's the same conversation, right? It's the same thing.
Same thing, quicker also. Better audio.
Yeah.
And more comfortable for us because I can tell you holding a microphone in the car is with the air off.
Or we would fog the windows.
Fog in the windows, yeah.
And then security people would drive by it. Yes, very terrible.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's a little weird, but people know them as CarCast, so we stick with them as CarCast. Let's get another question from JY. Can you all share what you've learned about their quarterback, Emory Jones?
Yeah, I think I got into a little bit during the preview. He has ability. I think he's maybe a little bit more of a statue than I expected in the sense of I think he was taking some sacks that maybe you just want to get the ball away. He does have 3 running touchdowns. I don't know what the nature of those touchdowns are, to be quite honest. So they could be QB sneaks for all I know. But he has an arm. Like, that's the thing is he has an arm, and if USC gives him an opening and doesn't get to him, I think he could carve up this defense in the passing game. The problem is ASU has done a really, really poor job of protecting him and not giving him time to throw. So he's had to make every throw that he makes that I've seen is with a man in his face. And sometimes he's able to pull those off, and it's quite impressive. And sometimes he takes a sack. So it's just one of those things where you could imagine him behind a better offensive line being steadily productive. But I don't know that you see anything that suggests that he's like a great quarterback that USC needs to really, really fear, certainly not in this offense.
Yeah. You know what he is for me? Jaden Daniels light.
I mean, I would say a lot less dangerous than Jaden Daniels because at least Jaden Daniels
light.
Yes, light. But where Jaden Daniels could complete a really pretty pass occasionally, but it's just like he was never particularly on top of things when he did that. So I don't see from Emory Jones the same kind of if you don't get him down for a sack, he's going to kill you with a 20-yard run though. So that's less thing to worry about.
Yeah, which was absolutely a problem that SC had. Yeah, for sure. Let's go to a couple of questions. Chris C says, hat game is strong once again. And the Lizard King said, WTF is the logo on Michael's hat. It is the Hartford Yard Goats.
Yep. Minor league baseball team.
Yeah. This was a Christmas gift that you got. You got me this for Christmas, right?
Yeah, I got you that and the Rough Riders.
Frisco Rough Riders. Which I've worn in a couple of episodes
too. Yeah.
Thank you, though. I appreciate it. Lamont says, should Eric Gentry get 55? We talked about that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Randy says, question with the unique makeup of this team and this being a new staff, still learning each player. I can see the starting lineup and rotations changing quite often as the season goes on. What say you?
I think each season goes in its own sort of way that doesn't necessarily have to do with the particular staff or the particular layout of a season. Rotations tend to get narrowed down as coaches figure out who they can rely on. They also get narrowed down by who's injured. And then occasionally guys pop and are able to burst themselves into a rotation, but I think that's just a little bit more rare. I don't know if that answers the question, but
yeah, I would. This is a roster that is still trying to figure itself out, right? We know that there's injury issues on defense with Romello Hideout. Corey Foreman has been in and out of the lineup, so there's going to be places where I think you're going to see more rotation. There's already been opportunities for guys to come out of the buried depth chart hell that they're in.
Solomon
Bird was someone who was third team in week 1, and then by week 2 he was first team already.
Yeah,
and we saw that especially week 3 and 4. He's been a first teamer as a starter on this defensive line. So there's ample opportunities for people to grow. So as those opportunities are there, I expect that the rotations will continue to change. going forward this season. Jason B says, let's discuss the number one issue, USC's inability to pass protect. Caleb has had 0 time in the pocket before it collapses. Okay, so this is interesting.
I pulled up the tweet that we talked about earlier, Michael, so that I could give this fun fact.
I don't like when you watch the Oregon State game, yes, that was a major issue. He was constantly under duress, and it was amazing that he wasn't sacked 38 times, especially there in the middle quarters. 100%, I agree. Having said that, Alicia, go to the stat.
USC quarterback Caleb Williams has a 3.28 second time to throw average, which is the longest in FBS.
Yeah, and who's that from?
That's from Eric Fronten.
I don't know how we were talking about this before we started recording. I don't know how that's recorded.
I don't know how they calculate that. Is that from snap to throw? Is that from snap to a defender getting within a certain sphere of the quarterback? Is that a snap to a hurry or a sack or anything like I don't know exactly how they calculate that. But I think it's telling because what we've seen basically is very much a feast or famine protection. Caleb either gets 1,000,000 hours to throw or none. And I think that we saw that against Oregon State too, where they were getting in his face immediately, or he was given plenty of time and he just sort of missed a throw occasionally. So more often than not, against Oregon State, it was an inability to pass protect. And I think a lot of that had to do with Bobby Haskins not looking right at left tackle.
Yeah.
With potentially dealing with an injury. I think also the way that Oregon State was sending their blitzes were that delayed blitz thing that kind of flummoxed USC's offensive line in the past as well. So I think that this is something that USC's offense is not just an offensive line issue. Of course, the offensive line is a major component to that, and they need to sort themselves out too. But I think it's also an offensive scheme and play calling issue where if a team is approaching a game with the defensive approach to the pass rush that Oregon State had, how do you counter it? You counter it by quicker passes, by just getting the ball out. Maybe you run a draw. Maybe you run a screen. We haven't seen slip screens that I would have loved to have seen slip screens in that game to counterbalance the way that Oregon State was getting through. So I think it's a multi-part thing, but it's worth noting that in terms of the stats, the first 3 games, Caleb was given 1,000,000 hours to throw. So it could just be the way that Oregon State approached it was what got through to this offensive line.
So I'm skeptical about any of those numbers. I'm skeptical about the PFF stuff.
We don't know where they come from. We don't know how they're calculated.
So. I like that there's analytics for these things. I'm pro analytics. Give me all that data. I guess I'm skeptical in how that stuff is actually formulated when we don't have all 22 camera angles for every game and all these things. It's how exactly are they generating these kind of numbers? Having said that,
the eye test bears it out though. For me,
well, to go to the point, how is it being recorded in the sense of Caleb Williams is very good at extending the pocket. So is this because he extends the pocket and his ability to evade adds time there? I don't know. Secondly, USC's offensive line was the best unit on USC's offense last season.
Mm-hmm.
I think we agree that they were, right? I don't think that's a hot take. The offensive line was very good last year. And the offensive line through 3 games, the first 3 games, were very good. So I had no issues there until the Oregon State game. Yeah. And that's the one where it's you start to have questions about is Caleb Williams missing Cortland Ford? So yeah, I don't know. I think
might be back this week.
I think we're going to see more as we go forward to really understand those things as we go. Next question. Randy says, do you think the starters are out by midpoint of the 3rd quarter? If my score, the 55-17, comes to fruition, yes. Alicia's 40
to 21.
Yeah, I would say probably not.
Here's my issue, though. We have 3 games. 2 of them were comfortable enough to pull starters in the third quarter, and if I don't think they did. So I would guess that they would pull starters by the fourth quarter. We haven't seen Lincoln Riley be that quick to say, let's just wrap this up. So, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. I would think it would be great if you had the starters in there. First drive of the third quarter and then out. If you're able to just make this a true gravedigger offense, drop a whole bunch of points at the beginning and then bounce. I think that'd be great for USC's development, especially with Washington State looking like a potential trap game ahead of Utah. Alex says, do you see a situation where Chris Claiborne could return as a USC position coach? Sure, I think that would be cool. I think nobody's rooting against that, right? Like you always want your legends to come back, especially in an assistant role where they'd have less pressure as they would as a head coach. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I also want it to be because
for the real reasons,
because he's earned
right?
it. You know,
for genuine reasons.
Go coach at other places and prove yourself as a really top tier linebackers coach, and then yes, absolutely come in return.
Yeah. Trek Ranger says, I just realized both of you are in the same room. The Lizard King says they are always in the same room. And Roger Dodger says, no, they just both shop at IKEA.
I love the Roger Dodger, though, won the chat with that one. That made me laugh.
We're actually in completely different rooms. We just have the same.
Yeah, we create the same background for us.
Yeah, exactly.
Just trying to mess with you guys.
The Lizard King, will Miller Moss play the entire fourth quarter? That's the hope. Right?
That I would say is more likely than pulling starters halfway through the third quarter.
Nate says, do we deserve our number 6 ranking? I think we look good, but are we really that good? To the point where someone in the chat says, who definitively is better than USC at this point? Are there 5 or 6 teams? I think there are 3 teams. There's Georgia.
Yeah.
There's Alabama and there's Ohio State. Those 3 teams are better than anyone else on the planet. Alabama being weirdly the question mark because they struggled against Texas. But you give them the benefit of the doubt because it's Alabama and Nick Saban.
Mm-hmm.
Those 3 teams don't compare against anybody else. Outside of that, you have a bunch of flawed teams that are not infallible. And that's what's great. Clemson has flirted with disaster for a long time, right? SC is not a perfect team. Absolutely. Are they maybe what we think of as a number 6 team? No, but I think that what we have in our mind of what a number 6 team is never actually real. It's not real.
Right now in this day and age, a number 6 team is a team that is not a playoff team.
Yes.
So I say that's perfectly exactly where I think USC is. They're on the upper echelon of teams who are not playoff teams.
Yeah. Last thing before we head out here, Josh Geyer says, I usually listen to Rod on Spotify at 1.5 speed. Crazy person, man. Absolutely crazy. But here I am on YouTube, and I like to like and subscribe to your new channel. Listening at real-time speed has been fun. Out-of-body experience. You guys are... See, I can't even read.
You can't even do it. Well, we've been told before that when you listen to us when you get used to hearing us on 1.5 speed or 2 speed, then you listen to us like as normal. It sounds like we're drunk and slurring our words, which we promise we're not. But like that is always an experience to me.
Yeah. It's always wild.
Yeah,
Lizard King says Michigan too. Yeah, I think Michigan is one of those top teams too.
Michigan's like a 0.5. Like they're flirting with being in that 3, but not quite there. But certainly closer to being a playoff caliber team to me right now than USC. Just in terms of they've been better than USC for the past few years. So
yeah. Go back to Josh's comment. We appreciate you, dude. We appreciate you and appreciate everybody here in the chat. Be sure to like the video, like the stream, and subscribe. All we want for Alicia's birthday, which was last week, is 1,000 subscribers. Just get us there.
We're so close, guys. Yeah. We're so
almost
close.
There. We get us 1,000 subscribers, and I will do nothing weird. I would promise to do something weird, but I don't want to actually do that.
I listen to this Big Brother. I do this Big Brother podcast where somebody made a bet that they would eat a chapstick on air if somebody got to a certain point in the game. and they did, and I was just like, why would you ever make that bet?
So,
like,
I
Josh in Buckeye Country, I don't think he's in the chat today, but he was trying to bait me into doing drinking a thing of mustard.
Well,
if something happened, I was like, there's no way in hell I would do that.
I said I'd drink a gallon of mustard if SC lost to ASU a couple weeks ago. I said that.
Well,
I'm not. I was trying not to bring that up because I want to take that back. I don't mean that.
No.
I don't mean like again, I'm predicting the SC to win 55-17. So I think that they're going to have their way with ASU, but I don't want to do that. I mean, maybe for the views it would be good, but
all I know is I made a pickle bet a couple years ago relating to Port Augustine playing in a game,
and you had to eat a pickle.
That cyborg decided to play, and I had to eat a pickle, and it was traumatic, and I will never make that kind of bet ever again.
No, I wouldn't eat a pickle if my life depended on it. No. All right, guys. We will be back on Saturday night for the CarCast. Right after the game ends, we will hop on here. The
nice thing about the CarCast is if you're up and you want to hear stuff about USC when the game ends, we'll be right there. If you are on the East Coast, like many of our loyal followers, and don't want to stay up past 1 o'clock, then go to sleep. When you wake up, the episode will be right there ready for you on YouTube or in the podcast catcher. So
if you subscribe, it will be ready for you.
It will be ready there for you. You'll get a notification that it's even there. It'll be great.
Yeah. This guy, Zakari Best in the chat says mustard is Castillo's kryptonite.
Zakari Best.
But potentially. Hey. The other thing I want to point out, we talk about the CarCast. Next week's game, the Washington State game, is on at 4:30, which is beautiful.
Perfect.
Because that means the game is going to end at 8 o'clock Pacific. We can do the CarCast. We'll be done with the CarCast before the Japanese Grand Prix.
It's going to be perfect.
In Suzuka at 10 p.m. Pacific.
Yes.
You got to love it.
Yes. Also, shout out to Randy for challenging the chat to get their significant others accounts and subscribing. We are not above asking for you to.
There you go.
To get your kids' accounts, get your burner accounts, get your significant others' accounts.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All of them. Your poor kids. They're like waiting for Blippi, and then all of a sudden we pop in there.
Troy. Hey, get them started on the football early. It's fine.
All right. We will catch you then, everybody. Lizard King says, I look forward to the CarCast. We look forward to seeing you in the chat. So until then, thanks, and see ya.
See ya.
See ya.